Hello and welcome to week 25's Dinosaw. So another 7 curious, interesting and innovative things I've seen this week. So let's crack on. So first of all, the PlayStation 5 hardware was revealed and a few more games as well. So Sony had about an hour long, it wasn't actually an event, it was more a pre-recorded video that they launched. Due to COVID, so they just put out a pre-made, pre-edited video. But in there you can see over an hour's worth of games and people talking about the hardware. So interesting things to note are there is a new shock, a new controller. Instead of DualShock, it's called DualSense. So for instance, the triggers can now have haptics behind them, so that as you're pulling a bow and arrow, for instance, the actual triggers can react to them as well, be far more sensitive. It's got a solid state drive in it, so loading will be super fast. It's got 3D audio. But other than that, it's more of an evolution than a revolution. So yes, it will be much better graphics, up to 8K in some instances. Whether you've got an 8K TV is questionable. However, you know, this compared to the Xbox Series X, as it's called, they're both relatively similar. Not really much between them. The Xbox Series X has probably got more power. But actually, interestingly, it does actually take more power as well. Some reports are saying that the Xbox Series X will take twice the actual energy to run it, and therefore it'll be hotter and therefore maybe more noisy than the Xbox, than the PlayStation 5, which will take probably half the energy. So it's interesting whether you're on an eco mission or not, to which console you might get. However, look out for these in say October onwards. Most interesting thing for me is the return of Ratchet Clank to the PlayStation. Big fan of that game. So an interesting video I saw. This was originally on I think on Twitter, but originally on a sort of TV show in Japan, basically implying that certain languages, especially English, are more likely to spread COVID than others, just because of the vowels and the consonants that you use. So this was a lady saying this is a pen, and obviously really pronouncing the P on the pen, and therefore you can see a tissue in front go nuts when the air came out, and therefore the potential was to, or the implication was, it could then transmit more droplets and therefore more COVID. So whilst there was a whole load of people essentially taking the piss on Twitter by pronouncing this is a pen without any air coming out of it at all, or pronouncing the Japanese version with lots of gusto, essentially it was completely kind of fraudulent video, and it's just how you said it. The more violent the way you said it, it was bound to do this. However, there's a really interesting thing behind this. There are certain languages that produce more sort of airflow, should we say. So in the future, will certain words be frowned upon because they are socially more viral, should we say? What would our business language be if we were in close contact with somebody on first sight, and out of respect we might not use certain words. So it's an interesting sort of linguistics addition to the world of linguistics, should we say, the viral transmission. Germany, or at least the German government, have revealed their fiscal recovery package, and there's a huge lean towards energy and innovation in there as well, actually. So one of the things that really caught my eye was 2.5 billion euros investment into EV charging stations at traditional petrol stations. So this is not sort of a, they'll put 1 or 2 in and see how it goes, or leave it up to the manufacturers to do it. This is essentially a government mandate to do this. This will be law. So yeah, so they're putting 2.5 billion euros behind that as well. They're also upping, I think, more or less doubling their incentive to buy an electric car as well, from about 3,000 euros, 3.5 to 6. And also interestingly in there as well, they're promoting hydrogen as well, hydrogen power. So batteries are not the only way to power electric cars, and also they might not be the right way to power electric cars. We're not quite sure yet, to be fair. However, putting hydrogen infrastructure in there and promoting it is an interesting addition to that as well. In research paper studies, this was a really interesting one about swear words. There are certain swear words that make you more creative, or at least flag you as being more creative. I think women swear more than men, and the world's most popular swear word is the S word, shall we say. However, the F word has a huge benefit to reducing pain, it seems. So the way this works is when you say the F word, and I'm not going to say it, don't worry, When you say it, it causes an emotional reaction, and that emotional reaction actually has a sort of a neurological impact on pain. It reduces it. So there's a really interesting study, and some great sort of people who were involved in the studies who had to come up with, and these were sort of authors of other reports, who had to come up with words for non-meaning potential new swear words. So one was foosh and the other one was twizpipe. So the experiment was essentially put your hand in a bucket of freezing water, and this is a known test, and after about 2 minutes the pain is unbearable. So they got people to say that either the F word or two of these made-up words that had no sort of emotional significance, and it found that essentially by using the F words the pain threshold was reduced. The pain time was increased, so you could actually keep your hand in the bucket for longer. So it's really interesting that certain languages do actually have physical, or certain words do actually have a physical effect on your body. So interesting dinner party anecdote. Possibly, if you swear, if you use the F-bomb when you hurt yourself, there's actually science behind that being a good thing. You'll also be happy to know that the automated bricklaying record has just been broken at 200 blocks per hour. The human record has been standing for 33 years, and it's actually 915 bricks. Now, I think there are about 12 bricks per block, so technically speaking, the actual robot has already won. However, if we're talking about physical objects being laid, then it's got a long way to go. But the two machines in current development, both by the company, they're called Hadrian machines, and this one can actually do 200, and they're aiming for at least 1,000. So it'll probably be about a couple of years off, they say, until it'll be production ready. But on one hand, is this going to reduce basic labour? So is this going to reduce brickies and the like? Yes, it is. Is it actually going to allow us to build more affordable housing? Yes, it is. So there's quite an interesting economical and probably social conundrum to go on there. And by the way, it does actually deliver the mortar as well that goes into these blocks. So it's not just going to leave a sort of a freestanding wall that you can tip over. Watch that space. Geolocation fraud. Who'd thought this was a thing? This is not a new thing. It's just really come to my attention, so I thought it would be interesting. So there's quite a lot of things about ad fraud. So ad fraud is where, for instance, you can either take money for a service in between delivery and purchase of the ads and basically steal the money, or you can potentially, if you are the end owner of a website or a platform, you can lie about who comes to your website. So this is also what geolocation fraud is about. So if you want to target, say, people at a holiday resort or possibly Heathrow or in London or wherever, people arriving at Heathrow, you want to advertise a taxi service to them, you will pay a premium to anybody with a mobile phone that is geolocated in Heathrow Airport. So certain apps can therefore make up and override their geolocation or their longitude and latitude. So you can see two examples on the left-hand side of a phone or an advertiser's app that is essentially just recorded. It's just generated longitude and latitudes over the areas it knows it's going to get more money for. So obviously this is a bad thing, and but it's obviously making money for the fraudsters. So there's a thing called arrival paths. So this does rely on having free open mobile data, and certain handset manufacturers and operating systems don't allow that anymore. However, if you can track somebody comes from a city and you can track them all the way to a destination, it's more likely that they actually are a real person. So, so the example on the right-hand side is for a Utah ski resort who wanted to prove an advertising campaign was actually driven or actually drove users. So when it ran the advertising campaign in a certain area, it could track people back to, say, the same time a year ago when they didn't go to the ski resort. They ran the advert, and then they could track the people going to it. So essentially it was sort of a geolocation attribution. So, interesting. If you're in this world and you haven't thought about geolocation fraud, then maybe go and have a look at that. And then finally, excuse the video, But you've seen a whole load of examples of machine learning and people doing object detection and people taking one video and basically puppeting another video, those sorts of things, or maybe taking a video and generating a different style on top of the video. This has always been out of the normal person's reach, including myself. So until Runway ML, so this is me having a play with it. So this is you download it, it's free, you can upgrade it of course, and you choose what you want to do. You select a camera, and it basically runs the machine learning there and then. Yes, so I'm doing all the things that you've seen on kind of funky videos where people say this is a car, this is a machine gun, in videos. You can train these things as well, so they can be adversarial trained, so you can basically train it with a data set and keep testing it against the perfect example, and it will improve itself, etc, etc. So if you're interested in any of this, then definitely download Runway ML, start playing. I didn't even read the instructions. I was up and running probably within 5 minutes. So what you do with it, by the way, it's more aimed at sort of the visual area of machine learning. So if you want to figure out how to remove backgrounds on things, you want to get depth perception within images, so it's all that sort of stuff. So really, really interesting. So if you've never played with machine learning but really, really want to, this is probably your way in. And there we have it. So thank you very much, and I will see you next week.